Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Baka podcast.
Baka.
It's amazing how every time you open your mouth, you prove you're an idiot.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Baka in the morning, because we're recording this in the morning and we're all very tired. Just throwing it out there. You're like, what is even this show? Well, this show is an anime podcast where we watch an anime every weeks and then we discuss it on this podcast like we're a book club, and then turn the discussion over to you. And I just wanted to put up front that it is early morning, which it usually is not. So more of what you love or of what you hate, depending on what you get out of the show. Today, we're talking about the anime No Longer Allowed in Another World. And to discuss it, I need the help of my co-host with his hot take. It's the catcher in the rye to my Salinger, Jeremy.
All anime should have at least two genres.
Oh, okay.
There's my hot take.
Cool. Want to expand a little bit? Just like a little bit?
Good
example?
Oh, a good example is this anime.
Perfect.
But basically, I am so intrigued by the idea of not just a genre, but how two genres bounce off of each other and how they combine. Now, we've seen some that are like really bad examples of that, but I think there's always complementary genres. And even if you find ones that are bad at the outset, I bet there's ways to make them good, make it a good mix. We just haven't seen it yet. So I think that the more we have, the more chance there is to actually succeed in that. So it adds a level of depth that is hard to get from any other approach, I think, if you have at least two genres present.
Okay. We also have the Twilight to my mire. It's Jason with his hot take.
Anime movies should only serve to further the current story of the anime if it's a franchise.
Oh, that is a hot take. I don't know if I agree. Mm-hmm. Are we allowed to debate it on?
Yeah.
Do you have an example?
In a vacuum, Demon Slayer Train was great, but I don't know how it furthered the story of the main plot.
Wait, that what?
That one totally did.
That
it was like season 2.
That was literally.
No, you're right. No, that's a bad example. God, I was just thinking about this the other day, and now it's gone. I don't have a good example at the moment.
Every Dragon Ball Z movie ever?
Yeah.
Broly. Yep.
Okay.
It's just no place in the timeline.
I don't. You're right, and the Dragon Ball Z movies bugging me, but I feel like there is something to be said for giving people more of what they want without making it a gate that you have to get through to get to further content. Like Demon Slayer ran into this problem. They're like, okay, how do we make sure that everyone knows the Demon Train story as we go on to our next season? And their option was they recreated it. They just did it again in the show. Whereas the Spy Family movie, which I almost picked for this year's movie, well, because it didn't advance anything, it broke no new territory, but it did give me more Anya stories to love. I had value in it.
So how do you feel about the first My Hero Academia movie then?
See, I think actually that's the best common ground, where it's
right
in the lore, it's in the continuity, it did happen, but it's also nothing so essential or game changing that if the audience misses it, they're not going to know what's going on by season 2.
What I liked about the movie is that you didn't need to have watched season 1 to appreciate the characters.
Right. Yeah, actually, I think the My Hero Academia movies find a nice middle ground of this still happened. They might make a one-line reference to it somewhere, but you also don't have to have seen beforehand or have to have seen this to keep going in the normal series.
Oh, okay. Another thing to put on top of my hot take. Anime movies that just recap a season are garbage.
I agree with that.
Okay, maybe not
but,
garbage. Waste of time.
They're there to serve as a different way to view.
Do you mean
the season.
OVAs?
Maybe.
I think
So like,
OVA just means that it was not released in a theater, if I understand correctly, because you can have different OVAs content.
Okay,
the first Overlord movie was just the season 1. Like, it's like this is a waste of time.
I think it's for people who don't want to watch the entire season, and it just gives them a way to just cut to the most important parts according to the editors.
Then watch something else.
It just generally seems frivolous. I think sometimes, it's, hey, here's a condensed version, but they also will add a new scene.
That's
add
true.
Some extra
Sometimes
context. So it's almost like reading the book of the motion picture that you just watched in a different form.
I feel like that's the same way I do about decaf. Either drink coffee or don't drink coffee. Decaf doesn't have a place in this world.
Now that's a
hot take.
Not really anime related, but
and my name is Troy. My hot take is that there is no value that comes from a live action remake of something that was animated.
Yeah, Ghost in the Shell. Mm-hmm.
So, having gone to the movies last night, there was a trailer for they're doing a live action of How to Train Your Dragon.
Oh yeah.
And I was so frustrated because everything was just a 1-for-1 recreation of the animated movie. And I'm like, why to seeing this with a real person? And by the way, the dragon looks identical because it's also a computer animated dragon, which it was in the movie. So the only thing you did is you replaced the animated human with a real human. And it's shot for shot. I'm like, so there's no I guess I could see something like, well, you can't have just see in real life to see a stampede in the Lion King versus the animated version, it would have more impact. But again, that wasn't an actual real stampede. In the live action, they did a CG. So I don't see the value in these remakes. I understand the company's value. Mm-hmm. I don't understand because they clearly do make them money, why people are like, yes, I need to see this look real, because then it'll hit me emotionally. I think those people need to grow up and realize that animation is just another medium of storytelling. That's
because I think a lot of creators today are intellectually bankrupt when it comes to new IP, or the other side of that coin, their hands are tied because investors don't want to invest in not nostalgia.
I put the responsibility on the audience. I think audiences don't reward original ideas. They want safe IP driven stories, and that's
vote with your wallet.
I think an evil money making corporation is going to do whatever makes them money making.
They're locking down IPs too, in the sense of they've got to produce something about it in order to keep it from the public domain.
And there's trademark issues, obviously. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I get that. Again, I don't understand. I can understand why Disney's like, hey, let's do a live action remake of The Lion King so we keep that IP.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand why audiences reward them with $1 billion for that.
True.
Yeah.
Look at Alita. I mean, that was a great movie based off of an animated series.
Yeah, and Ghost in the Shell wasn't terrible, as much guff as I give it, but I think they're kind of niche. I do agree broadly.
What I'm saying is, what did the audience member, get out of seeing it be real versus when it was animated? What extra layer does that add? That's what I'm missing in my understanding.
There is a sort of connection that you can have with something that is acted instead of drawn. The emotion on the faces, the recognizable human aspect to it.
I've definitely been guilty of this in my life. I remember like, oh my god, a live action Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah,
I finally
right.
get to see it be real. And now I'm like, it gave me everything I needed in animated form. Why was I just not happy with what I had? Anyway, okay.
Yeah.
I think we're good.
We're way past. Okay. This is your fault.
Especially since we have a lot to talk about. So, no longer allowed in another world. We're watching another isekai. Or is it?
Mm-hmm.
Let's go to non-spoiler reviews. This was Jeremy's pick. And Jeremy, we talked about this in pre-show. We just got to say, you dig through the trash.
Yes, I do.
Sometimes.
Sometimes I come bearing like actual garbage. And other times it's a gem.
But yeah, you find gems that me and Jason never would have even considered in a million years.
No.
So thank you for doing the good work. Your review of this anime. Non-spoiler.
Yeah, it was not what I expected, and I'm so happy it was not what I expected, because I thought it was just going to be a silly parody and that there wasn't going to be any real depth to it. But it turned out to be a veritable well. Like this anime is fascinating. The main character is really entertaining. The other characters are entertaining. It does a good job of fleshing them out. Some of them, not all of them, get a huge, arc or explanation, but it even explains some of the character designs, the general purpose of the anime, which is kind of revealed as you get into it. So again, no spoilers, so I'm not going to go into it too much, but it's really analyzing isekai, and it does a fantastic job at it. So I highly recommend this one, especially if you've watched a ton of isekai. The more isekai you've watched, the more you're going to get out of this.
Jason, your thoughts?
Very reflective of what Jeremy just said. Like, that was going through my head, but right before you said it, is that like the more isekai you've seen, the better this anime gets.
Mm-hmm.
And again, like I said this last week, like if an anime has me thinking about it, or any story, I usually rate it higher, because this one took me by surprise. Like, I thought it was going to be, protagonist does really dumb things and gets kicked out. Like, it's going to be a silly comedy. There's some silly comedy in this. However, I was saying in the pre-show, this has all of the makings of an anime I would hate. And the writers are so good.
Yeah.
It's just, they're able to make these compelling characters in very short scenes and make me care about characters that are 1 to 2 episodes long. Like that is very rare in anime for me. So definitely a recommend. This is funny. It's engaging. It had me thinking. And it's got some really deep themes that like you wouldn't think this would have. So
Mm-hmm.
Good stuff.
This anime looks like every single, like, hey, just make another isekai and get it out the door. It plays with all the tropes. It touches all the standbys. And then you start paying attention. And it took 3 episodes before it reveals its true intentions, I think. And then it's like, there is thought put into the writing of this. This is not just a by the numbers story. It does things that like thematically are crossing. It is reaching back into Japanese history, which we'll talk about more in the spoiler section. It does some really interesting thing. And like I said, it's all about isekai, but it's talking to its audience and saying, hey, isekai has been talking about something we've been talking about for a long time, and you guys just haven't realized it. And then it puts its finger on where I have always had problems with the power fantasy isekai, and it's so smart in everything it does. It doesn't look great. It looks very average. It doesn't look bad either. But yeah, there's no like Sakuga that steals a scene or anything like that. But the writers might be straight up geniuses. And after episode 3, I was hooked. There's a lot of meat on this bone where I thought it was going to be like, we were just going to have another, what is funny? discussion.
Yeah,
So
Right.
I am so excited to talk about this anime. And I honestly had the thought while watching, like, sometimes what Jeremy finds is just amazing, and it's him. He
I'm dredging.
you take the big swings. Whereas I like to take picks that I think are popular, that maybe will get us some more clicks, and I want to see, like, that's always the basis of what we want to see. Yeah, but you take the big swings and you whiff. Sometimes
Yep.
I whiff, but I whiff too. We all do.
Yeah, you do.
How to summon a demon lord. And so many others.
Yeah, let's talk about the opening and the closing. What are your guys' thoughts?
I like the opening. The song took me a couple of times to get it, but like, when that first like riff comes on, and he's falling backwards, and then it's his expression turns to a smirk. It's just so reminiscent of the whole show. But like you said, Troy, there's no Sakuga here. Yeah, but the ending was good too, but it was fine. Not a ton to write home about with either of them for me.
Yeah, the music of both just had me hooked. Very, very good, especially the way that they wove the ending into a lot of the episodes. It just added that extra punch to really get your emotions going with it. I also liked how in the outro, I got more of a sense of his contemplative nature. Whereas in the intro, it was more of like the introduction to all the characters. I did like what they chose to do for their color palette and just their art design in the intro. That was nice. Very pretty, almost like pastel mosaic kind of thing. That was cool. But yeah, I think I like the outro a little bit more than the intro, but both are great.
I'm more in Jason's camp. I didn't find much to write home about, but I did enjoy both of them. There wasn't anything that I was skipping or frustrated about. They just didn't feature prominently and like, oh my gosh, I have to watch this. I'm excited for the OP and ED to start. But they were good. They were serviceable. I got nothing to complain about there. All right, before we go to spoiler section, our next anime, we're at Christmas time. I don't know when this came out, but we are right there at Christmas time. And so it is time for our annual, we're going to do whatever we want. I'm going to pick a movie to give us more time with our families over this time. And I'm picking The Boy and the Heron. So we're going to do our first Miyazaki. So that's exciting. Also, probably look, I've seen it. There's a lot of meat on this bone, but it's probably it's the most Miyazaki thing he's ever made and the least story digestible thing he's ever made. So it's gonna be really interesting where it lands with all three of us.
I wonder how Heroin fits into this.
I was gonna say it's the spiritual successor to The Boy and the Beast. This was
Yeah, when you said Boy and the Heron, I was like, is it the second movie?
It's not about drugs. Okay, never mind.
Or is it?
Dun dun dun.
Dun dun. Miyazaki tears apart the heroin world. This is Miyazaki's last film until he decides he wants to make another one. And it should be, like I said, interesting to watch. Probably a little more meat on its bones than most of the movies we talk about. So that'll be interesting.
Cool.
It's on Max for any of those who don't want to pirate it, but I ain't judging. All right. The next is spoilers. It is a spoiler warning. We're gonna spoil this anime. We're gonna spoil other things.
Yeah, this is probably one of those anime where I would say go watch it, then come back.
I agree. But we're not going to wait for you.
Nope.
Spoiler section has been dropped. It's time for us to talk about the anime. So, we start with our main protagonist, whose name is given as Sensei, and him and his lover are committing double suicide, which I guess we probably should have addressed a little bit. This makes a lot of light of suicide. There is a very important reason for it, but you probably do need to know that going in, but it's too late because we're in spoiler section. Anyway,
we're good at our job.
We screwed that pooch. Yeah, but right before they do, Truck-kun shows up, and that's not a joke. They don't call it Truck-kun, but it is like they literally
do. Don't they? I thought they did in the subtitle, but that could have been me like superimposing what I wish they would call it.
It's the otherworld delivery system is what they call it. But yeah, the truck literally works for this magical world to bring people to it. It's how they teleport you in. Which is a great. That probably was right there. I was like, okay, that's a good bit. The anime, these first few minutes are played dead serious. It is very grayish, like the colors are super muted, and then the magical world. Our main character wakes up alone.
Well, kind of the main driving force, like everything's muted, but then there's this bright red string that he ties around his lover's hand and his, because they're going to jump in a river, a raging river, and that's supposed to keep them together into the afterlife. And so when he ends up in this new world, obviously it's cut.
Yeah.
So he wakes up, and this is when it reveals he's greeted by this elf priestess, who's like, hey, welcome to another world. You are a chosen hero to save our world from the demon lord. And he says, no, thank you. I want to die. And he takes a bunch of sleeping pills. And that's when it flips. That's when it's like, hey, actually, we're not taking anything seriously in this. And she like heals him right away, which she's upset about. And this is our main character, again, who just goes by Sensei. Your guys' thoughts on Sensei?
I wasn't a big fan at first during this whole like muted palette scene, but as soon as he starts, she detoxes him, and then he just starts picking them up one at a time and chewing on them like they're nerds or is like some sort of hard candy.
The sound effect is perfect.
It's so
crunch,
perfect.
crunch, crunch,
crunch, crunch, crunch, crunch.
He's got this pretentiousness around him that's not irritating or exhausting, which is fantastic for being a story, because like you can like him and hate him at the same time. He's just written so perfectly. He's constantly looking outwards because he does not like what's inwards. So he's always making observations around him that even as the audience, you may not see at first. And you start to kind of get the hook after a few episodes of what he's doing. But the pacing feels real good to where it's not, like I said, not exhausting. And also his gags are just great. Like, once we get to the coffin dragging scene, it's just like, what? This doesn't make sense.
Yep.
So yeah, I really enjoyed this character.
Yeah, he has a scoff that he does for anything that is negative or potential death or something. I just absolutely love it every time, because in any other situation, the bad guy is expecting, I'm threatening you, I'm going to kill you, and the main character respond with some kind of like energetic retort and valiance, right? And this guy's like, it's such a creep laugh. I love it. And yeah, everything Jason said. There's also this sense that this is his job is to explore other world characters and their motivations, and also just other characters in general. And you get such a strong vibe of this is not a named character, because it's kind of a glimpse into the mind of the author and what he has to go through in order to come up with these characters and to care about the story and to actually be engaged and to write something meaningful that you're going to walk away from and remember. and think about these characters. And in many cases, in a lot of anime, I imagine that the authors are, and probably just movies and stories in general, the authors are putting a lot of love into these things, but maybe they don't express it in a way that we all catch. And this is such a great opportunity to be like, hey, here's what I made. Does it hit? Do you see it? Is it good? And yeah, he's really, really good. Very well written. And like Jason said, his gags are so good. I loved when he was with the fairy queen and he's like opening his bottle and it's falling and the fairies are getting all pissed off because he's like digging through her cleavage to retrieve the pills. And he doesn't care. Like, he is not all the time. You have like isekai characters that are popping nosebleeds. Not this guy. He does not care. It is all casual. And so everybody else looks at him as like, you're weird, you're awkward, you're infuriating. And it's so refreshing.
I have two things about this character, and the second one is much bigger than the first one. So the first one is my review of him. Very interesting. He walks onto the screen, and you're like, okay, well, this is a different take. Also, you know, like, is this something we should laugh about? It's different in Japanese culture than it is in Western culture, but that's fine. You just kind of have to, like I say, if it doesn't bother you, it works what they're doing. And he's great. The fact that he doesn't resolve anything with combat ever, which is also a good thing because the fights in this are really terrible.
Yeah.
But because yeah, he's so anti isekai hero that he ends up being a breath of fresh air.
This is not a power anime.
He's got one hit point, and he's
got one hit point. It's
unless you threaten him with death, then he gets really excited.
Excited, and it just like ticks up.
Yeah, so I really liked the character, and I was enjoying him up till a point, and then things exploded. So this is part 2. I have been playing this card close to the chest, and not as a flex because I only figured this out by accident. This is a real human being in Japanese history. And in fact, it's the second time we've seen him in an anime. Do you guys remember Bungo Stray Dogs?
Yeah.
Yeah. Dazai, the suicidal writer.
Yeah. I was thinking about him.
Yeah, this is him. This is
no.
His novel that he's famous for is called No Longer Human. And so this is no longer allowed. In other words, and matter of fact, Dazai was found dead of double suicide of jumping into a river. This literally says at the very end of his life, he gets sent to an isekai. What No Longer Human? Okay. Again, I found this out by accident because my daughter's a huge Bungo Stray Dogs fan, and I was telling her about this anime, and she's like, "Wait, what's his name?" I'm like, "Well, they just call him Sensei," and she's like, "No, it's called No Longer Allowed in Another World." She's like, "That's Dazai." I was like, well, I had thought about that, but I thought it was just kind of a trope, like depressed writer trope, where he's kind of the mascot
romanticizing death.
Yeah, but I thought it was definitely just a trope they were doing. But yeah, this is one for one the actual guy. And then I started reading about him and what his novel was about. His novel is a semi-autobiographical story about himself. He can't understand people. And so his conclusion to that is, then I must not be human. If I can't understand anyone, I must be the problem. He suffers with depression, drug abuse, sleeping pills, alcoholism, prostitutes, tries to commit suicide with a lover multiple times through his life. And then with No Longer Human about to come out, he then succeeds. The book comes out, which then tells the story of a guy whose life, it hits post-World War II Japan, which is going through an identity crisis anyway, as Eastern cultures are switching over to Western cultures. And the best I understand it is his themes match up with like a Catcher in the Rye type story. His fame is probably around Mark Twain. So this would be like in Japan if they watched a Mark Twain isekai. And his demons probably go better with Ernest Hemingway. So yeah, a famous writer in Japan. That's what the anime is really doing is like, you all know who this is, wink, wink, without actually saying his name. But why I didn't tell you guys is because I think most American audiences wouldn't get that.
No.
And I wanted your reviews to come in without that knowledge. And so again, this was not a flex of I'm so smart, I understand Japanese history. It was
I knew
pure
this was
luck.
immediately.
But because his novel, which was about, it's really about isolation and not feeling connected to people and what that does to a person. And then I was thinking like, wait, that's what all isekai protagonists are. They are isolated and alone, and then they come to these fantasy worlds and have to either like ReZero, fix themselves so they can start making connections, or in power fantasies, hey, your powers have fixed it for you. That's when I was like, there's just so much meat on this bone. They took classic literature and then said, okay, what are we writing currently in Japan? And they said, we're actually still writing about the same thing in a different way. And they mashed the two together and then did it in a parody form. It's so good and so layered. But yeah, everything that happens with them is very much based on a real human person.
That's awesome. Yeah, even more reason why this is a great anime and you should go watch it.
All right, so yeah, he's awake, like we said, and this elf priestess becomes one of the secondary main characters. She falls in love with him almost instantly, mostly because usually isekai hero arrives, says, "I'm awesome, I have OP power," and runs off to go do whatever he wants. And this guy's like, "No, it's not about me. I don't want to do anything. I just want to die." And it's such a like breath of fresh air for her. She falls in love instantly. And this is the
okay, so but there's a little more to it. I missed this, and thinking back on it, I'm like, oh, first episode anime is telling us what this anime is about, because it makes it look like she's just a failure of a guide, which is great because it works really well for her character because she's terrible. But she has these flashbacks as he's walking out the door of, oh, I tried to guide this person and they turned out terrible. Oh, I tried to guide this person, they died. I tried to guide this person and now they're just like, horrendous. And so it's interesting that she's like, oh, the one person that didn't accept this is now like, I need to fix him. Almost. And so she starts chasing him.
Well, not right away. She lets him go. But we need to talk about her, Annette. Your guys' thoughts?
What a fantastic character. Jeremy, you said it best when you said almost like an Aqua character. Mm-hmm. She's trying to protect him, especially in cases where he doesn't seem to need protecting. And she's trying to be pure of heart, but her feelings and emotions are getting in the way of her judgment in almost every scene. And she's a really funny character. Obviously good-hearted, good-spirited, but misguided, if you will.
Mm-hmm. A misguided guide. What also cracks me up about her is how she's supposed to be part of the clergy of this land, right? And so you constantly hear her being like, oh, thank you, God, this, or God, do this, and that. And then you also immediately hear her be like, there is no God, there is no, because she's like waffling between the two if something isn't going the way she needs it to go. And it's actually really funny. When she immediately, every time there's a scenario where any thinking person, self-respecting person would be like, no, I don't want to do this thing. It's demeaning, or it's hard labor or something, like pulling a coffin, right? She's just like, no, this is for sensei. I'll do it. I love it. You can't do this. Don't do this because you're stealing it from me.
Yeah. I'll buy that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so she's consistent. She's funny. You know what her gag is from the beginning. She delivers. She lifts the spirit, because this anime has so much potential to focus on tragedy to its own detriment, right? Like it could get really morose, and she's one of the elements that just brings you a little bit of sunshine and a little bit of silliness to make sure the mood is still light.
Yeah, she enters the anime and falls in love with him, and I my eyes rolled all the way over. Yeah. I was like, no, not again. How not to summon a demon lord definitely popped in my mind. You know, she's well developed and wearing scanty robes. And then the anime says, no, that's not what we're doing. No other girl falls in love with him. Yeah, there is other hot women around, but Annette is singular in her super love for him. And she's not aware of that. She thinks she's in a harem anime and she's fighting for him. Yes. He just doesn't care about her in that way. So she's on her own. And she's presented as like, I'm the serene priestess, but she actually has like very little emotional tolerance, and she boils over almost immediately at every situation. She freaks out constantly, to great humorous effect. She is one of the best comedic beats in the story. Her and Sensei almost kind of playing from different angles, not even off of each other, but just, hey, here's like a slapstick funny character, and here's like, hey, a dark comedy character that we're doing at the same time. And she's definitely a highlight of the anime, which I did not see coming. So yeah, we see Sensei leave the temple, and immediately, because he discovers a location, like it's clearly a video game world, even menus pop up and stat bars. We've already seen his stat bar has 1 HP, but he levels up, and he's very upset that there's a video game voice in his head. That is very depressing to him.
Don't talk to me in my head.
And then he encounters a cat girl being attacked by a tree monster. And he walks up to it and just is like watching, like, oh, this is an interesting way to die. And she's like, you need to help me. He's like, oh, okay. So he raises his arms and kind of waves them back and forth. He's like, no, I can't reach. And then the tree grabs him and hangs him. By the way, this first episode, I'm pretty sure references every real suicide attempt he actually did in his real life. He's tried to hang himself by a tree. He tried to overdose on pills. He does eventually drown himself in the river. The girl he tries to drown himself doesn't have the same name as the real woman he did. But you should read the Wikipedia for No Longer Human. It adds a little bit of extra context to everything this character does.
Also, I did like this. This was a throwaway joke, and it wasn't like a continuous thing. But they totally made the tree look like tentacles when it was grabbing.
Yes.
No, I was like, no, Jerry, you've done it again.
Yes.
No, I was feeling the exact same way, but the fact that it was a one-time throwaway joke worked really well for me.
Yeah, speaking of playing cards close to the vest, this anime, like I said, it doesn't present its concept fully until end of episode 3, and it would have been very close if I had watched this on my own of being like, no, I don't think this is for me. And you definitely have to get to that point where it reveals what it's really doing that I would have enjoyed it. So yeah, she's being groped. He's now hanging from the tree, and the tree is sucking their life energy, and then the tree dies because he's so full of toxins and poisons, cigarette smoke, alcohol, sleeping pills, actual poison, that anything that ever bites him, stabs him, absorbs anything from him instantly dies. That's his power, really. We get his real power. Yeah, this isn't even a power. It's just he's so toxic to this world that he kills things instantly, which gives him a bunch of XP, which again, he complains about the voice in his head and is now upset that he has once again survived. So he's all depressed. The cat girl is joining him, and he names her Tama. And this is a great joke. She keeps saying, "But that's not my name," and then he starts talking over her every time. I actually was upset we do eventually learn her name, but so also the subtitles reference her as Tama. The credits reference her as Tama. Your guys' thoughts on Tama, the cat girl?
I thought she was great. I did have that fear of, oh no, we're gonna meet 14 more
Yeah.
voluptuous girls, and probably one of them being Loli, and they're all going to fall in love with this guy. Great.
Yep.
And the fact that she didn't fall in love with him, and that she was more along for the ride just because it was interesting and fun, definitely worked well for this gaggle of characters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this was the character where, learning her backstory even explained her character design, and I thought that was really cool. You don't always get that. The name Tama actually translates to the equivalent of Fluffy or Spot. It's like a pet name for a pet and not a person, and I absolutely love that. And the fact that later on, when you do find out her name, it doesn't stick. Like, they go back to Tama, and like that is the point of the entire arc with her, is to say, no, you're not that person. You're Fluffy. You're Fluffy. And at the same time, like, if you think about it, it's demeaning, but it's also adoring. Like, you can have both of those in the same name, and it's hysterical seeing that. She's a great character. Now, as far as her behavior and who she is, she's kind of par for the course, what you would expect for most anime. It's got an interesting backstory. It's very spunky, and generally likable and fun.
Yeah, I don't have a complaint about her. I just found her one of the less interesting parts. She's the only character really with an arc at this point. Mm-hmm. But it's also very tropey arc. It's very predictable. She's kind of tropey. Outside of I really appreciated that, again, that she wasn't just another floozy who joins the harem, and the fact that she constantly is like the person trying to console Annette as she freaks out about the women that Sensei brings back.
Even if it's like an old woman, she's like, it's a woman.
And that always freaks out. And Tama just kind of like consoles her every time. I thought was a really fresh take on that, and I really appreciated that. But her character herself, she is the attacker of the team. She's bouncy, she yells, she's loud, but she's not grating or anything. I didn't think so. She just kind of was there after everything. So she just doesn't stand out as much as like Sensei or Annette did.
Right.
All right. He then realizes, wait, if I was hit by Truck-kun, then Sachan, my lover, was also probably hit by Truck-kun and could be here as well. So he goes and asks Annette if that's possible, and she's like, yeah, but she could have showed up at any of the other temples. So they set off on a journey to go find out if Sachan has arrived in this world, and that's kind of the original premise of this anime, that they then have to world travel. And what I do like is that it's basically they're just jumping from point to point. We don't go with them every step of the way. It's not free written in that it is, hey, this is all just to serve a purpose. Mm-hmm. But Annette abandons her duties at the temple to accompany him.
She sends a letter of resignation.
With a very unreliable familiar.
Even if she did, she's still just like, I'm done with this job. I gotta follow this guy or he'll die. And then like half a mile into their journey, he's tired and finds a broken coffin on the side of the road and climbs into it as the perfect bed. And then for the rest of the anime, anytime they travel, they're forced to drag him in a coffin from place to place. In the next episode, they visit a castle town and go to see the king and the princess. And the king is like, "Oh, guys from another world." And remember, this world gets people from our world all the time, so that's like a common thing. He's like, "Oh yeah, another world of hero, come on in."
Felt very tourist attraction-y.
Right? Yeah.
Tell me your story.
Tell me your story. Also, hey, help me pick the husband of my daughter. There is the fighter and there's the music guy. The music guy joke, even though I was very leery of the anime at this point, the music guy joke landed really well. We'll get to it when we get to it, but I just wanted to call that out. Sensei refuses to pick. He's like, that's dumb that you would ask a stranger to do that. You're a terrible king and a terrible father. I'm going to go to bed.
I love the fact that all the time, like it's a recurring thing where he gets option A, option B, and then just option C scrolls up. He's like, I'm not playing your game.
He hates binary choices.
Uh-huh.
Again, Crunchyroll, screw you for not just showing me what the Japanese text says. I had to always assume what the two options were. So if there was jokes in there, I couldn't see them.
Oh, it showed up for me. That's weird.
I had on subtitles.
Mm.
Weird.
Right. Maybe it's because I watch it on my iPad. Do you watch it on computer?
Mm-hmm.
Computer or phone. Samsung.
All right. That doesn't.
Well, you specifically called out iPad. That is a completely different operating system, and the apps are different between the two.
I imagine the apps are more similar than between a TV and a computer. Okay, it's fine. We're moving past. That night, after a great Annette scene, because she finds Tama cuddling with him and freaks out, but Tama's like, "I'm a cat. I did cat things. That doesn't mean anything." And then they yell so much that he just kind of wanders off. And he finds the princess, and she's talking about like, "Oh, I don't know what to do. Like this would be better, but I've known the music guy forever." And he's like, "Yeah, do what you want." And then the next morning, she's like, "I've made my decision. I choose Sensei."
And I choose to die with Sensei.
And I choose to die with Sensei. That's right. That is an important factor because the fighter guy, well, actually, she calls out that, yeah, the music guy, he always played music to make me feel better when I was sad. But then I remembered he always played music even though I was happy. And I think he just wanted to play his music.
And then you start getting flashes of like he's standing there during every scene in the background.
Even the scene, yeah. The last night when they were talking with the princess, he's right behind them. He was there was a music in the scene, but you find out he was the music player.
He just wanted an audience.
Yeah, it's a good bit. The fighter guy reveals that he's actually a giant minotaur hiding in
she
armor.
Says he smells.
Yeah, she called out he smells. Yeah, he's a monster for the demon lord, and he starts attacking. And then the music guy starts playing, and they're like, "All right, bard buffs, here we go." And there's no buff. He's just like, "No, I'm just playing."
And then he's level like 86. And they're like, "How are you not helping us? You're level 86."
It's a great bit.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, at least there's something funny about this anime. Again, I was not on board yet, so I was like, okay, that's pretty good. They start fighting the Minotaur, but then since he's like, okay, Minotaur, before you do anything, can you just kill me and the princess so we can get on with it? And the Minotaur's like, what? All right. And then the princess is like, wait, I don't actually want to die. I want to live. And Sensei's like, yeah, I know, and pushes her out of the way.
I like how he basically chastises her for her lack of conviction. Like, you don't deserve this.
Yeah. And it's revealed this was always Sensei manipulating her to make a real choice about what she wants to do with her life by basically putting her to the extreme of, if you keep going with the flow, this is where you end up, even though he's perfectly fine with it. He is saved by his companions. They defeat the Minotaur, and the princess decides that she's just gonna, take action. We find out she takes over the kingdom in like a week, and in a good relationship with her father. Like they make up, and then the heroes move on. Then they go to, while they're traveling to the next temple, they come across, they find out the resignation letter was not delivered because little bat Milos, that's what Sensei names him, didn't go. But then a dragon shows up, and then a robe lady who can control the dragon arrives, and she reveals herself. They're like, oh my god, it is the demon lord. And she finds out that Sensei is an otherworlder and puts her hand through his chest. Because she's like, I'm going to kill every otherworlder. He's like, yes! That's what I'm talking about!
Finally!
And she stabs him through the chest, and he's like, I see sadness and anger in your eyes. And that freaks her out, so she jumps on her dragon and flies away. They get Sensei to the temple and they heal him. And our next scene is him buying poison and drinking it because he's like, they healed me too much. I feel good.
I feel too good.
I feel good. This can't stand. So he buys the poison. Annette is yelled at by the other
Mentor?
bishop.
Another
Mentor,
co-worker?
friend, close friend. Yeah.
Just another priestess. 'Cause
Yeah.
They have the 4 temples. It's one of the 4.
I think she's a bishop. I don't remember if
Well, they're each in charge of a temple. Like, so she's in charge of, if I remember correctly, the forests and the wind or something like that.
Right.
And they went to her place. Yeah, this is her town she's in charge of.
It's very I want to call it's very generic in that it doesn't really matter.
Mhm.
You just got to know there's 4 temples and 4 locations, but they don't even make like a big deal about like the geography of it. They're just like, yeah, the next temple we're here, and the next priest in
It's
front
very
of it.
like early Final Fantasy kind of approach.
Yeah, and the priests always show up in like the next town anyway, even though they're supposed to stay in their
Yeah.
temple. That was like a big thing. We stay in our temples. Okay, we're leaving to go fight over here.
Yep.
I guess the temples did stop working. That is a
Yeah, the
plot
seals were all closed.
Yeah. This is where we find that out. A week ago, the Demon Lord was defeated. And they're like, why would Sensei even have shown up? Because we're supposed to be done.
It was on the same day, even. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and then we get a shot of the other worlders in the Demon Lord's castle that defeated him. Annette goes and buys Sensei armor. It's so big he just sits inside of it like it's for like a giant brute of a man, and he's just sitting in it like, okay, I'll just stay in here, but he can't move. Then the shoe drops. This is where the reveal is. These heroes show up in the town. This guy's name is Suzuki. And he's like, hey, we've, other worlders have defeated the Demon Lord. Be thankful to us. Also, now we're in charge.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, this episode ended and I was like, that's genius. To say, hey, these isekai protagonists that are sitting in their rooms, like clearly having issues, overly focused on a video game, why do you think they would become heroes by default?
Mm-hmm.
That's so weird. The
money guy is so funny because like you just take 2 seconds to think about it. That's your only power. You could just make money appear. It's like, what?
Yep.
And we should also know that Sensei was offered an OP power, a job, so he would get his OP power, and he's like, no, I'm a writer. I don't need a job.
Yep.
So the other worlders are mostly the bad guys, but not all. I like that it's not all other worlders, but it is in general they tend to be the problem. Yeah. So this guy named Suzuki, his ability is if he touches you on the head, he enslaves you. It's called pet, which in the isekai anime, he like touches wild animals and then they become his servants. But he uses it on Annette because she had been mean to a different otherworlder earlier. And then when Tama yells at him, he uses it on Tama as well. And then he unleashes his wolves on the townspeople who are like, this is bad. You shouldn't be doing this. And he's like, you ungrateful heathens, monsters, go. Tama attacks Sensei, but he's still inside that armor. So she just destroys it until it knocks her out. And then he hears from Annette's friend, whose name is Isha. He talks with her and he's like, oh, this Suzuki guy, he sounds like a tragic character. I must go talk with him. And just marches straight into the temple. And he was like, we're going to sneak around. And she's like on all fours. And he just like opens the door and she's behind him, like sneaking. What are you doing?
No, well, right before that, he like pulls out a bottle of poison, like perfect.
Yeah.
We'll like throw it in there, and and then he's drinking it.
So he walks in and basically, calls this guy like, you are a depressing, deplorable person. and I want your story. And that offends him. So he's attacking with the dogs. Eva's fighting off the dogs. They shoot magic attacks at him. Milos, the bat in the helmet, blocks the attacks. A giant wolf does bite Sensei, but then instantly dies. He uses a net, who's still mind controlled, to attack him, but she is able to overcome the control. And then Suzuki decides to kill himself. Mm-hmm. And Sensei stops him and is like, no, I need your story.
Yeah.
Which he reveals his backstory, which is he was a guy who was bullied all the time. Okay. This is one of the shorter backstories, but I loved it because it was a kid who was bullied and like said mean things, gets hit by Truck-kun, which we're told Truck-kun brings people who are miserable in their life over. That's the qualification to get to this other world. He showed up and he got his power and he started working on it. But then he'd like go into town and like he bumps into a guy and he notices like the townspeople are mean to him. They say things similar to the bullies. And I was like, yes, the fantasy world didn't fix anything.
Yep.
I was telling these guys in the pre-show, this anime puts its finger on what my problem is with the power fantasy, is that a show like ReZero says, hey, welcome to this fantasy world, but it didn't fix you. You still need to make your character arc and actualize as a character, or you're not going to be able to overcome the trials of this very difficult world you found yourself in. Whereas the power fantasies, and there's nothing wrong with power fantasies, it's human nature, but it's also not a heroic trait. And it bothered me celebrating these power fantasies of saying, hey, you've got overwhelming power. You now have friends. You now have girls who like you. You're competent and you can handle things socially. And this anime says that's not realistic.
Yeah.
We all feel levels of isolation, and power doesn't take that away. If anything, it would then become dangerous and amplify those negative feelings that you have.
It's really interesting because it's the difference between whether you believe that the flaw in your personality comes from outside or from inside. And I think that the power fantasy approach is like, hey, the problem is the environment. It's not you.
Right.
As soon as you get the power fantasy, you're going to be great. You're going to be wonderful. Your nature is fine. Maybe you have a few minor things to get over, but there's no major flaw. Whereas if it's from internal, which I think is more interesting and just in my personal opinion is more accurate. Yeah, I totally agree with you. This anime hits that on the head really well.
And it's not the only, like I said, ReZero, even Moshiko Tensei, the one with the pervert guy who becomes a kid. There are isekai that do it well, but then there are isekai that are, like, I feel like slime. They throw in
Shield
usually
Hero.
some.
To a degree, yeah.
Yeah, Shield Hero.
After the first season, I guess.
Shield Hero is interesting because it literally says you're not the hero. We hate you. Now do you want to be the hero? But he does get that power fantasy, and he gets, like you said, he gets friends.
He wasn't depressed or bad down in his regular life either. He was just surprised. But
honestly, the one that always hits me the most is the Demon Lord one. A guy who played a video game to a point of unhealthy life, right? He refused to be part of society. Wakes up in the demon world, has all the powers of his video game character, and then suddenly has these two girls that are clinging on to him, and he's fine. Like, oh, my life is all better now. That anime was doing its own thing. I'm not trying to diss on power fantasy. I have my own power fantasies as well. They have a purpose. I just like this frank, honest discussion about those power fantasies are addressing the same thing that the book No Longer Human was addressing, which is about, hey, we all feel isolated and cut off from society in our own ways, but you have to be true to yourself. That was the actual theme of No Longer Human. He spent so much time being a fake version to fit into society that he disassociated from his true self, that he needed to be real to himself, and then he wouldn't have hopefully gone through all the horrible things he did. And he's a bad person. No Longer Human's about a bad person. Kind of like Catcher in the Rye. Holden Caulfield's not like, you don't want to be Holden Caulfield. You're like, this is a whiny guy who just whines. But it was also saying this is what youth are feeling like today. from my interpretation of a Wikipedia article about No Longer Human. to be fair, I've not
GPT
read
summarize this for me.
Right.
My daughter did read. She's so into Bungo Stray Dogs. She literally has become like this literature person. She reads all the classic literatures. She's read No Longer Human. She's read Crime and Punishment. She didn't like No Longer Human because the guy was so detestable and there's no redeeming arc in the story. He's just a bad person and he makes bad choices his whole life because of that isolation and disassociation. Whereas a story like Crime and Punishment, there's a bit of a redemption arc. You know, the character realizes his mistakes. She tends to like that better.
I'll have to say, because again, the more isekai you've seen, the better this gets. It's always summon person from our world to help with a demon lord. It's always a demon lord. And I chuckled probably for a good couple of minutes when they said, "Oh, demon lord's dead." I was like, "Yes." Like they just threw that. They just threw it out the window. They're just like, "This is not it. This is not what this story's about."
Doesn't matter.
So I was looking at our list of like just the different isekai that we viewed, and just as you were talking, I was just thinking really quickly about like what each one would be about, and I actually found something interesting about just about all of them. So I kind of wonder if that's not just like the isekai oversaturation impression that we're getting. I don't know, because I think there's something there, but like for Eminence in Shadow, what would you say that that's focusing on? Like as far as him being a flawed character? Sure, yeah, but it's like it's focusing on him continuing to be that character. Konosuba kind of does the same thing, where it's like he's not resolving his flaws. He's not really fixing them. Right. And that's part of the humor.
Konosuba he's a flawed person and he refuses to get better. So he constantly suffers as he goes along. Eminence in Shadow, again, is an interesting take on it because he's not trying to be a hero.
Yeah.
He's not even trying to be fixed. He's playing a game and doesn't care about anything. It almost spits in the face of the trope of, hey, you were this self-serving. I don't want to say bad person because whatever people need to play video games and stuff, but living a self-serving life and then are thrust into a new world and became a heroic person. Whereas, and then Eminence in Shadow says, but he didn't really. He just kept playing a self-serving game for himself. He just happened to have the power, and it happened to also be real at the same time.
Yeah. So there's something there. Saga of Tanya the Evil, right? That was
character who doesn't want to be heroic. The power almost makes her worse. Overlord. Yeah.
Another one like that.
But remember, I had a problem in season 1 of Overlord before it kind of reveals that he is going the way of evil. That I had a problem with the power fantasy of Overlord. That this isn't good. This guy who's alone and isolated, he suddenly gets all this power, and now he's just awesome, and everything is great, and he can do whatever he wants. I'm like, I thought Overlord season 1 was celebrating that, and I had an issue with it because I want to see my hero stories be like Spider-Man or Superman. Spider-Man's a great one because he uses powers for self-serving ends, feels so guilty and ashamed of the effects of that he lives his life selflessly from then on. But then Overlord season 2, is like, you were right. He shouldn't have been self-serving. It leads to something horrific.
Yeah. So it's interesting because like I agree with you on a broad level. That's the impression I have of anime. But when I'm looking through our list, I mean the only other ones that are really left is like the most heretical last boss queen from Villainous to Savior, which is not really a good example of an isekai. And Suicide Squad, which
isn't really the same thing.
Yeah. So I wonder if that's just what the impression we're getting because of like Sword Art Online and how people have received isekai and maybe the oversaturation of it, but we haven't necessarily watched them to verify it. I don't know. I'm curious.
I do think we tend to steer away from the more plain OP power fantasy, but yeah, I think there's also a lot that why I think is really genius, because these are all talking about the same thing. The ones that are good, the ones we like, they are still talking about isolated humans and then using the fantasy world as a way to explore that and what they do, what they have, whether as a joke in Konosuba or, Overlord turning evil, even though there's also, hey, I lost my soul, so I kind of can't help be evil. But
whether they fix themselves or cling to the negative, the flaws.
And even as this story goes on, I thought it was just going to be just like this guy over and over again. I thought it was going to be Suzuki over and over again, and it didn't. So I came to my conclusion was it's talking about the same thing that No Longer Human is, but what it's really saying is we never stopped talking about that. We just changed how we were talking about it. But that is something that from then to now still carries on through individuals. I would say through a lot of youth, especially. It's a very common feeling to feel alone in the world despite being surrounded by people. But every backstory of every villain in this story, they mention the word isolation in almost every single one. And it's about, hey, I felt isolated. I felt alone. Then I came to this fantasy world. And this guy, he was bullied. He felt alone. The sister, over and over again.
Wheelchair guy. Yeah. Cool.
So we got the backstory. Sensei, this is where we learn what his real power is. He completes the story. He calls it No Longer Allowed in Another World. And, well, all right, that's why the title's that. I didn't get it yet.
But then he goes, but I can't be the one to complete it. And he tears up a page.
Which we had seen earlier that every time I write a story I get frustrated with it and he tears it up, and so that's the last part of his spell is he tears up your story and then the pages surround you and it sends them home, which I absolutely love because in so many isekai no one ever goes home. It's never a thing, and this anime says go home and fix yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And what's awesome, too, is that it allows them to retain their memories of this place so that they can learn from them. Because, I mean, it would be useless if they went back home and it was like, I just woke up where I got hit by Truck-kun and,
I love that we've dubbed it Truck-kun.
Yeah. I know I've heard that online.
The internet has dubbed it Truck-kun.
Oh, okay.
That's not my joke as much as I wish it was.
Yeah.
He gets a new coffin from Isha. That's even heavier and bigger that they have to drag. And then Isha tells Annette that she has her support to continue helping Sensei, especially because otherworlders are now the threat of this world. We let in a bunch of troubled people, and now it's happening.
Power.
It gave them unlimited power, and now it's affecting our world. So they're off on a quest. So the world wants them to go off sending these heroes back home, and that's why Sensei's been brought here, but again he's still searching just for his girlfriend. And then we do see this villain of the story, Suzuki, back at home applying for a job, and that he has moved on with his life and is working to get better. In the next episode we see the bishops all meet together. Other than learning that there's 7 main bad guys of these other worlds, they're called the Fallen Angels. We meet the Pope, who's a little suspicious because his whole thing it was his idea. Let's bring in other people. I love bringing in other people. Now it's a problem. He's like, oh, this is not my fault.
Bring the guy who can send him back to me.
We do meet the character Wolf, who's a bishop who's always drunk, but we'll learn more about him later. And there's the new girl. And none of these characters really make an appearance, but I'm sure they are in the bigger story. Besides Wolf.
Except for Wolf.
Yeah. In the normal world, this is where they meet a young boy who offers to help any party find another world or hero to team up with. And Annette, thinking, good, we need someone to protect Sensei, pays him
$40,000.
$40,000. Yeah. And it turns out to be a scam, obviously. And then the boy gets abducted by actual otherworlders who rob him, and Sensei shows up. And just how weird he is ends up freaking them out. The fact that he's like, yeah, shoot me, that's gonna be awesome, and his health starts skyrocketing because one guy has his power is to have a scouter.
God. Yeah, sabotage.
Well, like why?
And he saves the boy. It again just shows that to the boy, otherworlders actually aren't as heroic because he'd always thought they were, except for Sensei is. So he decides to team up with Sensei and joins the party. They get to this whole time. Tom has been like, "Come to my house," which has sounded like it was nearby and not a country away. But yeah, they reach her house, which is the land of Gran, and they are immediately arrested by the guards. And we find out the reason for that is she's the princess. Her house was the castle. Annette's freaking out in the dungeon is amazing. Like, God save me! God, why don't you listen to me?
There is no God.
There is no God. And Nier is great because he plays the straight man through this whole thing. Because he's like, why is Sensei in a coffin? Why did he just say he wants to die? Annette, did you just curse God?
Yeah.
Like that's his role in the story. I guess we should talk about Nier. Thoughts on Nier? Sorry. It's early.
It's all right. I wasn't a big fan. I think his sword story is a little interesting. But besides that, I don't know. He's just kind of there.
Tama.
Tama's too close to the mic, man.
We're getting some purr. Aw. I thought Nier was fine. Yeah, the sword story and his father, that is really intriguing to me. I don't know if Misery is his dad or if Misery killed his dad, but I'm super interested to know what's going on there. I like him as just a general character. I've seen this character before. So there's nothing spectacular about him, but it is a nice story to have here, especially because he's getting to, kind of grow up and come to his own conclusion about otherworlders, conquer his own issues. It does show that the NPCs, shall we call them, of this world are really suffering from the same flaws as the otherworlders. Like they're not exceptions to that.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you, Jeremy. And again, I thought he worked well as a straight man, which the group had kind of been missing. Everyone has their own comedic beat, except for there's no one to react to it and point out how stupid they are. So he served that role well. Yeah, and his journey to I can pickpocket or I can pick locks, and Sensei's like, you are the brave warrior, and then him really wanting to be a brave warrior, I thought was a nice piece of writing. Because they started here, this oh yeah, you're my brave warrior because you can get us out of this jail cell.
Yeah.
And he really likes that compliment, and then you find out that he wants to be the brave warrior of the group, and I thought that was a good carryover.
Also, I love how he manipulates him. He's like, oh, I guess I'll do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they escape thanks to the lockpicking, but are caught instantly. Like they're outside the door of their cell and they're already recaught. They're brought before the king, who sentences them to execution. And then Tama's like, hey, they didn't kidnap me. Leave them alone. He's like, well, I'll make you a deal. You promise to stay here and be a pretty princess, and I will let your friends go, which she agrees to. So they go to the bar. They learn her backstory. I'm just going to say her whole backstory because it's done through pieces. She had a twin brother, and he's supposed to be the warrior. She's supposed to be the pretty princess, according to their dad, even though the brother was definitely more of the scholarly type, and she was definitely more of the wild fighter type. The mom had given her advice. We find this out at the very end of the backstory. Be yourself. Only you can decide who you are. The brother and the mom had died in an accident, and so she had decided, I will become the warrior type to replace my brother for my dad, and the dad hates that idea because he wants to protect his last remaining child. All very relatable stuff. Also done through very no new ground being broken here, I think, in anime storytelling, but not that it was bad.
It was kind of cool, though, in the fact that I wondered, when I saw her hairstyle, it never even occurred to me that it was related to her past. And then seeing that it was just her trying to mimic her brother, that was cool. It made her a little bit more interesting because there was a background decision, right? When you look at a character design, you're like, oh, that's cool looking. That's why they did it. Versus, oh, there was actually some thought put into why this character does this.
Yeah. Another thing this anime does is it seems like, oh, this is a random cool thing they did, and then finding out, oh no, that actually ties back. Those are deliberate choice by the writers. You just don't think that's what this anime is doing 90% of the time. It doesn't pretend. It pretends like it's not, but then oh wait, that actually all connects.
And that's a big theme, is the you need to choose for yourself, like throughout all these confrontations.
Yes. So another worlder shows up. This guy's power, he has a giant magical dark mouth that eats things, but it goes into his mouth and he absorbs their abilities. And
this is one of the 7 fallen angels, the heroes that defeated the. Yep.
His backstory is that he basically was a bored rich guy who wanted to murder people.
Yeah, he's the most evil, truly evil character we've seen so far.
Truly evil, yeah. To the point where like he went out and murdered a person and then got hit by Truck-kun. Because it didn't satisfy him, so he still was miserable.
Yeah.
What I found interesting about this arc was that I thought it was going to be this repeating thing of, otherworlder does bad thing, Sensei comes along, sends him back. But we don't get that. And actually, I was really happy with that decision.
Yeah, same here. I was happy with both what he used his ability on and the fact that some people are not redeemable. I mean, that's just a big thing for me. So I liked that.
The king, the king's guards all get eaten, and the king is fighting them and doing well, but Tama decides she wants to join the fight. She's not being called Tama in this part of the story, but I'm not stopping. And
she is who she is.
She doesn't see the mouth coming at her, so the king pushes her out of the way. He loses his hand where his power was. And then the king's advisor, or the guy who trained the king, takes Tama away to Sensei and the rest of the group where they're at the bar learning her backstory. And then this bad guy presents the captured king to all the people and is like, all right, well, I'm in charge now, and you're going to feed me your own women and children because I love eating demi-humans. There's this great, like, this guy confronts him and he eats him. He's like, sorry, I should have explained. I'll eat the guys too. I just prefer women and children. But if you want to die with your loved ones, whatever, I'll eat them. And then he goes back inside and he's like, that should work. And he has ogres. They've enslaved all the demon lord's minions. So he brings all these ogres to help him enforce this.
These guys were such like hell in Dragon Ball Z. Callbacks to me.
The Heffel guys.
Yes. The blue and red ogres, the blue and red demons that are always in.
It is hell. The English, remember, they censored it. They took it.
That's right.
Heffel. Yep. Yeah. Then Sensei, he's really into Tama's story right now. So they go to the castle and he's like, we would like to be eaten. We're volunteering to be eaten. And the guards are like, wait, what? He's like, yeah, we want to be eaten. Keep bringing us to the guy. I didn't think anyone would do this. What do we do? So they get thrown back into the dungeon, which it turned out was Sensei's plan, because Nier is able to break them back out, and they go to the queen's room to read her diary, continue getting backstory. Meanwhile,
I love that Nier is like, wait, are we gonna go help? He's like, no, that's not what I'm interested in.
We're gonna go read the diary.
What do you think? I'm here to be a hero? I'm here for. He literally is just. I'm here for cool stories. Tama goes back and Reed challenges him to a fight because she thought her friends went to fight him, but they're not. But Sensei shows up and he basically concludes all the backstory telling that we've been given. And he tells the other guy, your story is boring. I don't care.
Yeah, because Annette's like, she does that whole tell the bad guy what you're gonna do before you do it trope. And then he's like, no, I'm not doing that.
She's boring. Yeah. I want to talk about Tama. So his power activates on Tama, and she's reminded of the stuff her mom said, and her true power awakens, which is the same power the king had, and she's able to use it to defeat the bad guy, who then awakens anyway as a giant monster now. but then the demon
For
lord,
like 2 seconds.
Yeah, because he ate the demon lord's flesh, he like reanimated.
right.
Mm-hmm.
But the girl from earlier who was the demon lord, actually the demon lord's daughter, she shows up and cuts off his head. Again, she's getting revenge for her father. And Sensei's like, "Oh, it's you! So excited to see you!" And she's like, "You're alive?" And then she runs away from him again. She's like, I'm gonna definitely kill you next time. Leave me."
Yeah.
He's like, "Oh, cool."
Yeah.
And I'm putting way too much
Kill you next
emotion
time.
into my pretend
Right.
Sensei responses because I can't do what he does. Yeah, and then they continue on their adventure. Tama chooses to stay behind. The king tells her, "You should go and come back even stronger." And then she leaves, and his teacher's like, "Man, you suck at telling your daughter you love her." Like, what? He's like, "No, I did really good that time. I felt that was good communication." No,
She knows
no,
what I mean.
she knows what I mean. So Tama rejoins the quest, and Nier is banned from pulling the wagon or the coffin.
Yeah. It's too bumpy. You don't pull consistently.
Next one, oh, this one's really good. They go to the world tree. There's a giant tree.
Mhm.
And when they get there, there's a casino on the edge of town. And Sensei's like, casino.
Yes.
But his day is ruined because he is now out of his sleeping pills.
Calmatin.
Yeah. So he starts eating rocks.
The world tree leaves are amazing, apparently.
Yep.
Yeah.
Highly addictive. Basically like a marijuana kind of thing or an opiate.
Yeah.
They're in there with hookah pipes. I think.
Yeah, it looked like opiate den, but also
Yeah.
I think the American equivalent is marijuana. So yeah, whatever. Either way,
Drug den of some kind.
drug
Yeah.
den of some kind. They talked to the mayor, and he's like, "Yeah, these other worlders who can build buildings showed up and created this casino. Basically, a gang, a mob of other worlders have set up here. And this other worlder named Yamada shows up, and he's like, I am heroic, and I not like the other worlders. I am here to help the world. I believe in justice, and I will help you deal with the casino." And they're like, "Oh, great, we'll work with you." Sensei, you want to help? He's like, "No, I hate everything. I feel he's walking straight. His back's all straight.
Yeah.
And he's like, I feel too good. I hate this."
I have a healthy mind. I have to do something about this.
So he goes to that smoke den, but a woman finds him and is like, "Hey, no, I got something funner. Come with me." She takes him to a bar, gives him booze, and then dances for him. And he's like, "I don't like dances." "Oh, your dance is really sad. That actually works." And then she brings him back home. Annette freaks out, but the mayor also freaks out. He's like, "You get out of here." Her name is Eshe.
Mhm.
The
He's
witch.
like, the witch. And he explains like when the casino and the drugs showed up in the town, she embraced it. We had prayed for help, and she came, and we don't know much about her, but she set up a bar and making a ton of money off of it, and so we hate her. And Yamada's like, "Yeah, okay, we'll have to take care of her too." And the next day they're getting ready to go attack the casino, and Sensei's like, "I'm going back to the bar." And while talking with Eshe, he learns she's using the money from the bar to pay off the mobsters to leave the town alone. Who are the mobsters are now like, "Oh, we need to get more of the drugs into the town." And she's like, "No, I'm literally paying you not to do that." And they're like, "Shut up. We're mobsters. We do mob stuff." And then Yamada destroys the casino, threatens Esha. Sensei, he scolds Sensei, and Sensei does that great line of, "I've been scolded many a time, and not once has it ever helped me." Or have I ever listened?
Yep.
But yeah, he runs the mobsters out of town, and then the town's like, "Yay! Oh, that witch is here. You suck." And Sensei's like, "No, actually, she doesn't suck. She's been helpful." And Yamada's even like, "You need to change your ways." And she's like, "Hey, I'm just happy the town is saved. I have no problem." And Yamada's like, "Okay," but the town's like, "No, get out of here." So she leaves, and Yamada's like, "Wait, she repented. Like, what are we doing?" And then the mayor, Sensei leaves. He's like, he points out, good and evil, what is that? That's a line in the sand that people draw for themselves. Like, it's hard to tell the difference. People place their feet on one side, and then who's good and who's evil now? The mayor comes up to Yamada and is like, "We decided to keep selling the drugs, leaves of the tree world,
And we want the bar.
Yeah, and we want the bar, and we want you to be our protector, and we'll cut you in for 10% of the profit." And Yamada, again, who is a man of good conviction. I actually thought he was going to be the villain of the story, and I like that they didn't, that he is actually a good man trying to do good things, but doesn't understand the complexity of the grays of the world, so that he literally made things worse.
Well, I don't know if he made things worse.
By the end, they're much worse.
Oh, I don't know if well, no, not necessarily, because they were going to bring in, like, they were going to go kidnap some of the villagers, right? And so the previous gang was still going to be there, and they were no longer going to limit it to other worlders. I think it was a catch-22 situation where no matter what you did, you couldn't fix it. You just have a different flavor of bad. Because now they're going to set up shop. They're going to sell the World Tree leaves, even though the World Tree like dropped its leaves.
That's what I mean. The World Tree's dead.
I think it would have anyways, because the moment that they started to go after the people and she could no longer protect them, I don't think that the World Tree would have been okay with that either.
Oh, I think it just died because Esha left. As long as they didn't run Esha out of town, they would have been fine. She's the spirit of the World Tree.
Yeah, I know what she is, but I don't think she would have stuck around for that. I think that she would have wound up leaving. I mean, it's all hypotheticals, but I don't think this is worse than what it would have been if it was allowed to stay in their hands. I just think it's a different flavor of bad. And I think that was his lesson was,
right.
You think you can fix it, but you can't fix this problem. Like, something has taken root here now that you can't just pull it up and go back in time. There'll never be a village that's just happy and living in simplicity under the World Tree.
Right. I guess I meant more in that the village deciding that Esha was evil instead of recognizing that we don't know her story. Maybe we shouldn't just jump to a conclusion and judge her. And Yamada, and Yamada wasn't part of that decision. Yamada didn't run her out, but he had written her off as a villain as well. Mm-hmm. I think if they don't kick her out of town, she goes back to living in the World Tree. At least the leaves continue. But then you're right. Then the drugs keep selling, and who knows? But I agree. I do agree with what you've said too about the overall that it really doesn't matter at this point. It's all too far gone. Evil is or bad is bad, and only Sensei recognized that by trying to force good upon something, you didn't do anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, as Sensei leaves, he is met by the spirit of the World Tree, who is Esha, as the World Tree's leaves are dying and the town is realizing they're now screwed. And she grants his wish, which is an infinity bottle of sleeping pills.
Of all the things that you could get granted.
Yeah. Then the party goes to the desert. They're attacked by a biker gang on scorpion motorcycles. Because the guy with the pompadour,
the dandy guy,
he's in every anime, and he's always the same too. He's always like, I'm super selfish and I'm super greedy, and as soon as someone stronger than him puts him down even a little bit, he's like the nicest, coolest bro you've ever met in the whole world. It's since every anime ever, and I didn't think he'd come back, and then he came back, and I was like, there he is. That's what they do.
Yep.
And he even calls the little big bro like, ugh. So Boss. Classic. Yep.
Yeah.
Very trope. But yeah, his power is to turn animals into vehicles. So they ride scorpion motorcycles through the desert. And then Sensei's like, oh, poison stingers? Yes, please. So they stab Sensei and it kills the scorpion.
Chavez, no.
Chavez died. He also had made fun of Nier for being a coward because Nier had frozen up instead of joining in the fight. After the biker gang retreats, they go to Nier's home, where he grew up in this region, which is an orphanage. And they learn that, there's a wolf in the area, and someone has been bringing food to the orphanage in plentiful amounts and remaining anonymous. Those are the same person, which Nier bumps into that night. It's a guy on crutches. His legs don't work, and he brings food to the orphanage, where he likes to watch them from the window. Not like that! And Nier befriends this guy. They actually go to an oasis that's nearby and get more food for the group. And then that night, the biker gang returns, kidnaps the kid to hold him hostage. And Nier freezes again. And then the stranger is like, takes them away and is like, I'll take care of it. And he turns into a wolf man and he attacks the biker gang. And then he's going to go kill Toru, that pompadour guy. And Nier is like, no, this isn't what you want to do. You don't want to kill this guy. You need to hold back. And he hurts Nier a little bit, but he actually does stop and he turns back into human. He's like, thank you, Nier. This all ends up in his backstory, which was he was wheelchair bound in his world and alone and bullied. And then a young man, because he's a fully grown adult, I'm pretty sure, young man had befriended him, defended him. But then later that young man had gotten attacked by the bullies and for revenge. And he had ran away. And he says, if my legs had worked, I would have done it. And Sensei's like, no, you're just a coward. You would have ran away. And then Nier, who's like, wait, there's nothing wrong with being a coward. He can fix himself. And the two all kind of realize, hey, we did our best. We at least we had kindness. We weren't, we're flawed, but we have strengths. And even Sensei says, maybe I need to rethink that. I kind of took this from the wrong point of view. I wish they had shown the wheelchaired man going back and standing up for the kid from his wheelchair to show that he didn't need the wolf powers in his legs to feel strong. But they do show he gets sent back to his world, and the young man is there to help pick him up after Truck-kun hit him, because you do show up right after Truck-kun.
Yeah, there was something about the way it was presented. I thought that his young friend had actually died. I thought they beat him to death or something.
Right.
And yeah, and so I kind of got the impression when he saw his young friend alive, that was just shocking to him. But also the fact that his young friend forgave him for running out on him was also very, very important to him. So in a way, I kind of wonder if, and maybe this is a stretch, but I kind of wonder if the flaw that he has of being a coward and everything, and then also the fact that he was in a wheelchair, is somehow a repetition, right? Like, that's not necessarily going to change for him. He will stay a coward.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that he is accepted and forgiven, and they see the good qualities in him, is like the important message of that one.
I like that. I like that a lot. Jason, thoughts?
Yeah, sorry, I had to get the Tomo away.
Yeah.
You won't leave me alone this morning. I think you're right in that this was more about this was not making a coward into a hero. This was more about fixing him internally and like having a different outlook on life and what you value, which is so weird to say because this is like clearly a comedy. However, there's just so many deep themes. It's ridiculous. I also really like that, he was creepily looking at them eat food, but he was also like defending the area as well.
From monsters, yeah.
From monsters. So that he was using his powers for that was it kind of felt like his own self-imposed redemption arc that he was going through. And I have a feeling that again, when I say self-imposed, I think not meeting the children, not meeting the orphanage caretaker, those were self-imposed punishments.
Yeah, like an exile.
He did not want the friendship and the good feelings of that, because he felt he didn't deserve it. And so getting over that before being sent back was pretty heartwarming.
Yeah, there was a lot of ways I thought this might go when it was starting the story. And like I said, I had kind of thought it was going to go with you do the heroic thing not because you have the ability to do it, but because it's the right thing to do. But I do like you need to accept your flaws for who you are and embrace the good values that you have. Forgive yourself for your faults and appreciate yourself for the good. Because his whole thing was, I don't deserve to be with the kids while they're eating their food and seeing their warm smiles in person. I just thought they were going to go with, well, just because you had wolf powers and could do good then doesn't mean that you should stop doing good without your wolf powers. But I do like I like the message that you interpreted there, Jeremy. Maybe even better, yeah. All right. The almost last arc, they go to the dwarf kingdom where there's a war with one of the fallen angels, whose name is Sengoku.
Did we ever see a dwarf female? I don't think we did.
I don't remember. This is
I love
so
that
funny
trope.
because this enormous army comes like I don't know if it's every day. It sure seems like it's every day. They battle and then the army runs away. And it's like,
and then the dwarves drink all night.
Right. Yeah. This serves nothing.
That's dwarves.
So yeah, there's basically the bad guys lizard army versus the dwarf army, but Wolf and Isha are there, and Wolf was the drunken priest or bishop from before, and his magic is so powerful he tends to win the fight for the dwarves. He literally is like, hey, everyone move slightly to the left, I'm using a powerful spell, uses a giant wind spell, wins the battle. However, this time Sensei got caught in the blast. He's flying around the tornado, loving life, but hating life. They have that night celebration. Wolf meets our main characters and is not impressed by them. He's like, oh, you're kind of like just like that, are you? Well, good for you. Milos, the little bat, he falls in love with the little white bat, but it's not going to work out. Sensei sees Wolf sneak off to a locked door in someone's home that night and talk to the person through the door and not be let in. And Sensei leaves saying that's not my business. But then the next day, Tuxedo, who's the boss of the fallen angels, the other evil otherworlders, switches who's in charge of the fight and sends a girl named Yuriko on a giant black dragon. And when Wolf sees her, he freezes up and she kidnaps Wolf and takes him away from the battle. So our heroes, they're like discussing what to do, and Sensei goes back to that door that he had saw Wolf at and knocks and is like, hey, I'm assuming you're like Wolf's lover. Can I talk to you about Wolf? I'm trying to investigate what's going on. And an old woman answers the door. He's like, I did not see that coming. So for the rest of the episode, he carries the old woman around. He goes to the war council room and he's like, oh, don't mind me. You guys just keep talking. And they're like, you're carrying an old woman into the room. What is happening? They get new gear from the dwarf smith and they decide to go save Wolf. The Pompadour guy shows up. He's like, I'm reformed. I'm a good guy now. I love you guys. He creates creates a cat bus. Great reference to My Neighbor Totoro. Kicks Sensei off though. Sensei, you can't come. Who's very upset.
Chavez.
You killed Chavez. And Sensei's sad because he had asked for something from the dwarf smiths, but they haven't made it yet, and he's all bummed. So they leave, and Sensei's like, well, I guess that's fine. I don't need to be involved. And the old lady's like, please take me to Wolf. I need to see Wolf. And he's like, oh, you talk. That's annoying. All right, we'll figure out a way to get there. They go, and I'm going to save the backstory, which is really good for near the end. Basically, they face the girl. She has these, like, black energy magic powers.
Very elfin led, but you can see them.
Yeah.
Everyone can see them.
Yeah.
And they can not only do physical damage, but they can also, like, suck life force.
Yeah.
And puppet skeletons, and, like, so it's got lots of different uses. And they're fighting her and her skeletons. And then Sensei arrives in Coffin Mobile.
Steampunk
coffin with wheels and
through the stained glass
drives through, and then the bat can turn into a magic carpet. That one was like, wait, what?
Yeah, it's a little shapeshifter thing. Yep.
Has it always shapeshifted?
Yeah, that's what brought them when he was impaled by the demon lord's daughter.
Oh, I must have missed that. All right. Okay. Cool. That brings the old lady in, and then we get a hey, I'm gonna attack him, and Wolf jumps in the way, and he gets hurt, and Sensei gets hurt himself, but he's like, story. The full story, which has been showing in segments throughout this arc. Yoriko came to this world, was studying under Wolf, really wanted to impress him, and was basically happy, even though her power was very weak. And she was finally starting to get control of her power, and a new girl showed up, and Wolf immediately started working with her and was like, oh, you're perfect for fighting the Demon Lord, and kind of abandoned Yoriko, who got so upset that her power fully awakened, and she attacked this young other worlder that also had shown up. But we find out in Yoriko's backstory that she had a sick little sister and was always neglected by her own family, as they had to care for the sister, and even to the point where she snuck out one day to do a pretend graduation for herself, just because she felt so alone and wanted to be part of the world. And when she came back, her sister had gotten a fever. Her father strikes her and blames her for being selfish and leaving, and she runs out and gets hit by Truck-kun. Well, the other worlder that had shown up was her little sister, because she had been so depressed. Without her sister, life had gotten miserable, and she got hit by Truck-kun. And so just all that kind of had compounded on itself. She blames her sister for stealing her youth, and we find out the old lady is her sister, who she had literally sucked the youth out of with her magic powers. And I was like, okay, the writers are really good.
Yeah.
Right?
That is an amazing connection that they clearly, that's a deliberate choice. That's so well done.
And the way that they layered it, like, you did a good job trying to present it in the same stages of, like, you get this much information, then you get this bit more and this bit more. But they broke it down even more granularly. Like, it was so part and parceled out that you got very pleasantly surprised by the tragedy of each page being turned.
Right. Yep. Because,
Well-
yeah, again, at the beginning, you think, oh, she just attacked this other random girl who showed up. And then, oh, I also had a sick sister. Also, that sister was the other girl. Also,
I thought she just straight up murdered her.
I
at
did
first.
too. And she thought she did too. You could tell, because she was like, I took the life of an innocent girl. Let's see how far I can fall.
Sucked into this void, into
Yeah.
the ground, and she's like trying to get out of it as if she's going underwater or quicksand. And it's like, it was grotesque. It's like, oh man, this is a rough way to go.
Yeah.
I had
Wolf
figured it
must
was
have
the old
saved
woman just because of Wolf's
Yeah.
connection to her. But yeah, then the last twist we get of this story is that when the little sister had arrived, she asked Wolf to quit training her sister, because her older sister had spent her entire life dedicated to taking care of her. She's like, I'll take on the responsibility, let her be free in her life for the first time ever. Had literally gone out of her way to help her, but it actually just reinforced that feeling of, I take everything away from you that you care about.
Mm-hmm.
With everything revealed, thanks to Sensei getting all this story out, the two sisters reconcile, and then Sensei's power activates to send them home. First, undoes the curses of all the magic, so everyone de-ages. Yeah, gets younger.
Yeah.
And then the two sisters go home, which was kind of a bummer because it looked like the younger sister's still sick.
Yeah, back at home.
but at least they. Again, because the story is about people feeling isolated, even though they have each other, but now a real connection has been formed, that they have an understanding of each other. They're no longer alone in this world.
Yeah, and I think that was another really, really big thing there, because that's one of the parts that hit me, was when he kept asking Yoriko, like, what do you want? What is it that you're trying to achieve? And he finally got her to admit that she just wanted to be seen. Mm-hmm. And just the moment, the way they wrote it was so graceful. Like, he picked up her chin and was like, that's not greed. That's something everybody has.
Yeah, because she declares herself, everything I did, I was so greedy. I wanted to be seen, and I wanted to be important, and I'm so greedy. And he's like, that's not greedy. That's very normal, and you're not a monster for that.
And then it followed up with her old version of her sister running up and hugging her to reveal, you were always seen.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was such a good punctuation, knowing that, yeah, you kind of resent this person because in your perception they've taken everything away from you, but the relationship you have with them is essentially, she became the mother that they didn't have to her little sister. And that's a beautiful story.
I got emotional. I was feeling. I was like, oh man,
Yeah.
I might cry at this.
Yeah.
And I was like, out of this anime,
Right.
But I very much have the respect for it. But it's so silly. A coffin mobile just drove through a stained glass window, and now I'm, oh man, that's real.
Yep.
But not just that. Like we've only known these characters for what 2-3 episodes.
At
Like
most, yeah.
That's fantastic writing. But then also another really great touch I liked was when he was getting her to admit how she felt. Her tears were black, just like her power was black.
Mm-hmm.
But as soon as sister hugs her, her tears turn clear, and then that's when the monster comes up and gets destroyed after the circle.
I didn't even catch that. That's really good.
Well, that mostly finished the arc, except for Sengoku shows up after they had gone home, and attacks them. Nier saves Tama by blocking an attack with a sword, and it shatters.
What did you call him?
Sengoku.
His name's Misery in the sub.
He's the angel of misery. His name is Sengoku.
Oh, I never even saw his name appear in the sub. Interesting. Okay.
Nier can't be his kid because his kid would be called Gohan.
Yeah, exactly.
No, his name isn't Son Goku. It's Sengoku, all one word, Sengoku.
I know. I'm just being.
Do you?
It'd be Son Gohan.
I can tell you're half asleep over there. I told you to have caffeine.
It's fine. We're okay.
We're at the end. It's fine. After Nier's sword, which is we're not told this, but you can tell it's his father's sword. And then we see a statue of the hero, and then we get a flashback of the hero, and the hero literally has that same sword on his back. The hero of this world, pre-Otherworlders, this is before they started bringing in isekai protagonists. This hero had a world.
No, I think he was an
had a
isekai
hero.
protagonist. I think he was one of the early ones.
Thought they said maybe because
I could be wrong, but
because Sengoku being his dad would make sense with what we see. Like he smiled after his sword had shattered, according to Tuxedo. That would make sense. I thought my interpretation of it from the Fairy Queen was that the hero had come to her, passed the trials, but they don't know what happened to him, and then the Pope started bringing in Otherworlders as a result of that.
Interesting. I did not catch that.
I think there's more information we don't know because it still could be Son Goku could be the hero, and then now he's covering his face to mask.
That's why. Yeah, covering the face is why I thought.
Yeah, and like you said, he had that smile that the sword broke his sword. He was happy about it. As soon as you said, I think Sengoku might be his dad, I was like, oh, that actually fits.
Yeah.
But then I was like, wait, does that mean he's not another worlder? Because I had done it, and I probably misunderstood the scene. It's just how.
I just can't wait till we get to the statue shenanigans.
They're great. It would be so amazing if that's actually his dad, or somehow his father was an Otherworlder, because he would be a half-breed, and that's cool. Like that creates a character with a very interesting background and unknown potential.
Ask about that. So I don't think it fits because I think all of the people at the orphanage had human-shaped ears, but like unless you're an Otherworlder, it seems like you're demi-human.
That's a good question. It could be the region that we're in, but there is something there.
All the bishops were elves, except for the one which they called out.
Unless all the other orphans are either half-breeds of Otherworlders, and so that's why they're in an orphanage, because there's no one to take care of them.
That would be amazing.
They're they're dwarven orphans, right? They would be in that region. But that's what I'm wondering. I'm going, were there originally no humans in this world? The only humans here are Otherworlders, because it seems all the other characters we run across are demi-humans.
Well, I know that the Fairy Queen said you're the second human to visit me. So I don't know if that is a term that only is restricted. Like, did they already have that term, or is that a term that appeared with the Otherworlders?
I feel picturing in my memory that back in the first town when the otherworlders attack the guy with Pet, I feel like the people of that town were human and not elves.
They were all
They were demi-humans.
They're all dog people?
Well, they were different kinds. There were some bunny people.
Yeah.
There were some dog people. There was a pig guy running one of the stands.
I don't remember seeing anybody in that first town except for demi-humans.
Well, the thing is, the one guy is like, I love eating demi-humans, so I guess I took it as demi-humans were rare, but maybe he just meant people of this world.
Well, he did say, I want to taste a female demi-human, as if he had never tasted one before. So I thought the same thing, that they were rare, but I kept seeing them everywhere, which kind of flew in the face of that.
Huh. Okay.
I like the theory.
Yeah, which would make Nier at least partially human, because he's got human ears.
Look, we're back at the Dwarven Castle for the next celebration, and Sachan finds Sensei. And he's like, "Oh my gosh, you were here! It was great. Let's jump off this building."
Just found each other. Let's die.
She tells him. She tells him, "There's something different in your eyes. You found some happiness, so I can't do it." And his party shows up, and she's like, "You have friends? Nope, this isn't working." So she leaves and rejects him, which throws him into a huge state of depression. He starts infinitely drinking the infinite amount of pills that come out of his bottle, just chugging. Where they go visit.
Well, one of the things that's really cool about this is that she's right. In the last battle with Yoriko, he actually was like injured pretty badly, and he goes up and what does he say? I can't die yet. It's the first time he said, I can't die yet. I'm writing your story. All the other times it's been like, you can't die yet, or your story's interesting. But he literally said, I can't die yet, which means he found a reason to live. Like, these stories are more important to him than the romantic idea of just dying, or the melodrama of just dying. And yeah, so what she saw was right. And that's, again, it's subtly woven in there.
Very much. So they go to the Dwarven Smith, and he fixes the car. He fixes any of their gear, and then they leave, except for Sensei jumps into his car and just drives away full speed, full throttle, hoping he'll crash and die. He's not steering or anything. So the party chases after him. They finally get to a town where he drove by and hit a statue and flipped it around, so now it looks like the hero is running from a monster rather than fighting a monster. And then they're like, the guy's like, don't worry, he's heading off to the Orange Land, where the only way to get past is to pass the 3 trials. So Sensei in a tunnel, and there's these guardians that are like, you must pass a strength of test of strength, and he just runs into him. Like, you must pass the strength of intellect. Runs into him. You must pass the test of spirit. Runs into him. Gets sucked up into the fairy world to face the fairy queen, and just lays on her giant tracts of land, popping his pills. And she's like, I'll only help you if you answer my question. Is it better to do this or this? He's like, I hate questions. The 2 choices.
He literally calls out, I hate these binary choices.
Yeah, binary choices. This is dumb. And she's like, wait, you're the one who knows Eshe, right? And he's like, yeah, I know Eshe. She gave me my pills. She's like, all right, well, I guess we'll help you. Here's a magic whistle. And anytime if you ever need the strength of the fairies, just blow it. And so he goes back to the town with the statue, and the party's like, oh, you're back. Oh, he's also told he'll reunite with Sachin. He'll get to see her one more time. So
he has to finish his
he has to
journey.
continue the quest, right? So this is the motivation to keep going. So he goes back to the party, and they're like, you got to fix this statue. So he instantly blows the whistle.
He falls on it, and the statue goes to where the hero's head is now in the monster's mouth. So he's like making it worse and worse.
Yeah, now the car is not working.
Yep.
Blows the whistle instantly. The fairy guard of the queen is sent to help, and she's pissed off, like, you just left. What is happening? And she hates him. And she's like, why would you summon me? And the queen's like, I promised him our strength. And she's like, oh, that's not me. No. He's like, fix the statue.
So
So yeah, now he gets a fairy warrior whenever he wants. He can summon her all the time.
He's going to.
It's going to be
the littlest things.
every menial task. But
Uh-huh.
not pulling his coffin. The great thing is they're back to pulling his coffin, and even though it has wheels, it's somehow heavier and worse than before. I love
It takes all 3 of them now.
I hope this guy keeps going, that the coffin just keeps getting worse and worse. But it's also, we did find out it's leveling them up. They're getting stronger from pulling the coffin. It gives them XP. And so his party, this idea that he keeps getting these bigger coffins, but they keep getting stronger and more OP because of his refusal to walk and just sleep in this coffin.
It's so good. She's even mad. Like Tama's mad. Because she's like, I got to level 16 from pulling a coffin. I'm a martial artist. What is going on? This is horrible.
All right, that brings us to the end of what we were able to watch at this time. Let's go to our final reviews. Jeremy, your pick, your review.
5. This was fantastic. Before episode 5, I was at about a 3. And then it hit the twins arc and it went up to like a 4.5. And then just the way that they concluded it and the consistent delivery of humor, and it went up to a 5. Like it's so good. It's funny. It's thought provoking. Fantastic. Great anime. You should watch it.
Jason?
Surprisingly deep themes for arguably a very silly anime. And I don't like, the what is funny thing keeps coming up. Like what is humor? This had me laughing, and I don't really laugh at anime. So the jokes landed really well. I watched the dub, and the voice actors did great. Like all of them, honestly. I didn't. Okay, here's a couple criticisms. The action sequences were terrible because they were mostly just still pictures.
That's fair.
There wasn't a big emphasis on music, because there was no like battle sequences. There wasn't like beautiful like traveling sequences, like none of that. But I'm still gonna give it a 5. Like I enjoyed the heck out of this.
Look, for as much as I enjoyed it, it probably is a 5. I'm putting it at a 4 just because the animation is pretty tame, and also despite that it's so well written, it's a geniusly written thing. To get through the plot, they kind of just push some of the trope buttons to move forward. The big one is Tama's fight. Like it feels like a battle I've watched 1,000 times in 1,000 animes, and not something unique, even though most of the battles don't go that way because Sensei does the flashback story thing, which was much better. But when they did have to have an out-and-out brawl, they just did it just like everyone else does it, and it was very generic. That's probably my only complaints about it. The fact, like I said, the fact that they are taking something that's a very important literary piece of Japanese history and then taking modern day Japanese writing and putting the two together and asking you to think about what that means, all that stuff. The theme exploration is so on point, and the writing is so deliberate with the actual plot details. It definitely could be a 5. I just felt like they took off their foot off the gas a little bit, one area. So I'm going with a 4.
Gotta be pretentious.
Yeah. Where's my Sakuga?
The animation I could probably get past a lot faster than, okay, when we did have a fight, let's just do it the most generic way possible.
Yeah. I did think that scene was to like emphasize that his power wasn't limited to just sending enemies back, sending otherworlders back. Yeah. But I agree with you.
The plot elements of it were fine. It was just the battle itself, and it was very predictable. You knew that Tama was going from like the second her dad's like, don't join the battle. Okay, well, Tama's going to have to be the one to beat him. Her father's going to have to accept her. Yada, yada, yada. We've seen this over and over again.
They did try to spice it up by having the Demon Lord's daughter deliver the final kill out of nowhere.
Yes,
But,
I did like that. I like that.
Yeah.
That it didn't actually work.
Yeah.
All right, but yeah, I'm locking in at a 4. Yeah, our next anime is the movie The Boy and the Heron. If it has an I in it, don't watch that.
No. No.
The boy does heroin? No, don't do that one.
No.
Yeah. Then after that, these guys will be picking their rules-free picks. Maybe something retro, maybe something season 7 of something we've seen before. I don't know. Whatever they want.
How to pick up girls in a dungeon.
It's
Yeah. We'll
rules
make
free.
Troy watch it.
Oh,
I'll be
God.
totally lost. I'll be like, who are all these characters? But
Yeah, you probably would.
we've had requests for a mini-sode of it, so whatever you guys want. Anyway, that's a next year problem for us. I don't know. What year is it for you guys? Anyway, if you have thoughts on No Longer Allowed in Another World or anything else we've discussed today, please feel free to come to our website, theanimebakaclub.com, and hit the contact us button. Or you can find us on Twitter at Baka Podcast or our YouTube channel or anywhere else you found this podcast. Feel free to leave a comment or a review or a thumbs up or booty pics, whatever. I don't care.
Jason's like, I do not approve this message.
Oh, only to Troy, not
like
me.
little cat booties, like
comma.
you put on
Oh,
their
nice
feet.
save. Yeah.
I love little tiny shoes, guys.
Oh, that's what it is.
Okay, now we're getting weirder.
Treasure.
I think it's time for us to say goodbye.
Thanks for listening.
Reflect on your failure to kill me properly.
Sayonara.